Hey guys, what is happening? YouTube Rules for Rebels here with episode 24 of Side Hustle Thursdays. So, you guys are getting back-to-back episodes this week since Side Hustle Tuesday actually wound up happening on Wednesday due to the holiday weekend and me being sick. And kind of a funny story, my girlfriend and I were having a big debate yesterday about whether today's episode should actually go down on a normal Side Hustle Thursday, or if, quote-unquote, like garbage day, everything gets pushed back a day and it should have been Friday. So if you guys want to settle a debate, let me know if I should have done today's episode today or push it back to Friday. But anyway, I digress. In yesterday's episode, someone complained, "Oh great, I get to stare at the hippie bus for 11 minutes." I thought I'd been getting a little bit better about dropping in some B-roll footage and photographs and stuff to make the videos a bit more visually interesting, and I'll try to do more of that moving forward to give you guys something to look at. I think you guys are going to enjoy today's episode, however, as it's about pole dancing. But before you get too excited, it's fitness pole dancing, not strip club pole dancing. So when we do these stories, not only is the aim to give you business ideas and to show you what other side hustlers and entrepreneurs are doing, but also to touch on some issues and issues that entrepreneurs and side hustlers will face. And today's story is going to kind of talk about and illustrate the issue of working a side hustle and a day job at the same time and how you do both, as well as if and when you should leave your day job to pursue your side hustle. So today we'll look at how someone navigated that decision in the context of today's story. So today's story is about a woman who was opening a fitness studio. I thought it was kind of funny we were doing this story now, as there's a huge fitness fad going on right now called goat yoga. Essentially, it's a yoga class, but with baby pygmy goats running around and basically jumping on people as they do yoga. If you don't believe me, Google it. It's actually huge right now. It is a real thing. And I actually saw a local community farm near me is going to be hosting a free goat yoga class next weekend. So I think me and my girlfriend are going to go check it out. And if I do, I'll try to take some videos and give you guys a sneak peek. Anyhow, guys, another potential business opportunity for you guys if you happen to know yoga and have a few pygmy baby goats lying around. So today's story is about Sarah Jacoby. Sarah was a graphic designer from New York, and this story goes back about 6 years. Sarah had noticed that more and more women were taking fitness pole dancing classes. She had taken a class herself in the past, and she liked it. She felt empowered, she had fun, and she thought it was a good way to get fit and work out. So, again, Sarah worked as a graphic designer, and while running her side hustle, she was actually later promoted to the creative director at her job. She was kind of curious about the possibility of opening up her own studio to teach some classes. Now, for many people, this would be out of reach as a side hustle. First off, you need space to hold your class, and that's not cheap. It falls outside the budget that most side hustlers have to get their business started. Not only that, but it's kind of a service-based business, and it kind of requires you to be present, which is, again, tough with a side hustle as most people are still working a 9-to-5 job. So what's nice about a lot of the side hustles we've discussed in these stories is that while they do take time, most of these things are things that you can do on your own time with a lot of flexibility, i.e. evenings after putting the kids to bed, etc. This fitness pole dancing side hustle, however, obviously requires that you hold classes during like normal, you can't run a fitness class at 2 in the morning. You're going to have to hold classes at normal hours, which is going to be challenging when you're still working a day job. But fortunately, however, Sarah had a friend who owned a building and had an empty studio and let her use it for what Sarah described as a quote-unquote ridiculously cheap price. Now, that's another thing about side hustles. If for some reason your side hustle needs an office space or a building, I think many of you guys would be surprised how cheap you can really get an office space for. One of my businesses is something that we couldn't run out of our house, so my partner and I had to rent an office space. It was in a rundown part of town, and the office manager actually kept a baseball bat and a can of pepper spray in their office, if that tells you anything about the area. That said, it was only $115 per month, and even my current office space, which is actually in a great city, great part of town, just minutes from my house, in a fairly decent office building, we're still only paying $415 per month for probably about 600 square feet. Now, granted, we are in the basement, but it's a nice office. It's a great area. Anyhow, my point is that office and even retail space probably isn't as expensive as you think. So let's get back to Sarah's story. So after announcing her first class, she had a number of RSVPs and she was really excited. Now, most of them were her friends, but a few people outside of her group of friends. The problem was, however, the first class came and not a single person showed up. Sarah wasn't ready to give up at this point, though. She announced more classes, and eventually people did wind up beginning to show up to her classes, and eventually people outside of her friends showed up as well, strangers and just customers. Now, a year into the side hustle, it was still not making money. It was basically breaking even, if that. However, because this was a side hustle and because Sarah didn't need the money, she just kept going anyways. So around this time, pole dancing classes were just getting mainstream. You may remember a couple years back when this was big. Sarah continued running her classes, and this activity gained popularity. Classes started to fill up more and more, and she actually got to the point where she hired an additional instructor to run classes, and eventually her one location grew to 2 locations. So years 2 to 3 was a lot of experimentation and trying different things and figuring things out. Years 4 to 5 was a lot of expansion, opening more studios and hiring more instructors. And by year 6, this side hustle was doing 6 figures per year. Now at this point, Sarah decided to quit her job and grow the studio full time. And this brings up the topic of, how did Sarah know it was time to leave her job? Sarah knew it was time to leave her job when she couldn't give 100% effort to her day job, she said. Her 60-hour per week day job plus teaching 30 classes per week was just too much. Sarah wanted to work for herself. She knew if things worked out that the long-term payout would be well worth it, so she quit her day job. Now, this is an interesting thing, quitting your job. It's something I really struggled with back in 2015 when I left my day job. My previous day job, well, it was a lot of hours, was actually a pretty laid-back job. I had a lot of downtime. I think in large part that's why I was able to get my business off the ground, because I did have so much downtime at work to focus on my business and work on my business. Now, I used to have to work Saturdays, almost every Saturday, or at least 2 a month, which were pretty slow days. Like, I may not have a customer the entire day. But as long as I was trapped at work for 8 hours, I would put in a full day's worth of work on my business. And in many ways, I don't think my business would have ever taken off if I was working some corporate job where a lot was expected of me and where my days were filled with actual work. Because of the job I had with a lot of downtime, that's really where I got started blogging and writing ebooks and getting into affiliate marketing, was because I had so much downtime at my job. And that's what helped me and my business partner eventually launch our business, which we're still doing today. So this is an interesting thing, quitting your job. It's something... So my business partner and I started our business back in 2012 with $268 that we pooled together. Things started slow and very humbly, selling some stuff on eBay, making maybe $50 per week beer money. We only took 10% of our profits out of the business and let everything else ride for a number of years. By about a year and a half in, we were maybe each bringing in a couple $100 per month, which I was really check from check at my previous job. So while the money helped, you know, it definitely wasn't even close to the point where it would, you know, support me or my partner full time. Now, I never really thought it was something that I would leave my full-time job to do, but I actually wound up doing it eventually. So over the course of the next year, however, things continued to grow. We were doing about $250,000 per month in sales and started making some real money. Still, though, our business was kind of a risky one. It was somewhat of like a trend or fad-based. We're in an industry that's tough to get payment processing for. At the time, PayPal had a 25% rolling reserve on our account, meaning any sales we got, they held back 25% for 90 days. That means if we did $1,000 in sales, they would hold back $250. Now, our margins weren't 25%. On a $1,000 sale, I may make $80 or $90, but PayPal's holding back $250. So essentially, the more we sell, the more money we lose, at least in the short term for 90 days until that rolling reserve starts over. So at one point, it got to the point where we had over $150,000 tied up in PayPal reserves, which made it difficult to continue to buy inventory and run our business. But, you know, we raised prices, we got some suppliers to front us, and we wound up figuring things out. So it was around this time that my business partner quit his job. I think he quit in October. I wound up quitting in mid-January. I wanted to stay at my job a little bit longer. I wasn't quite ready to leave. It was kind of a turbulent time as well. In addition to issues with payment processes and trying to grow our business, we also had an expensive lawsuit going on. I remember my partner actually grew frustrated with me taking so long to leave my day job, and I still remember the day I left. It was January 17th of 2015. I finally left my day job to strike out on my own. Now, I think my story is similar to Sarah's. It was time to leave my job when it got to the point where I couldn't keep up with my full-time job and my business. For the previous 2 to 3 years, I was working 40 to 60 hours per week at my day job, only to come home and spend hours upon hours on my business. I'd wake up 2 to 3 hours before work to print and pack orders, would go to work, answer calls while I was at work, and then do more printing and packing, as well as working on my website and doing marketing things into the wee hours of the night when I got home from work. And quite honestly, I was burned out. Anyhow, that's kind of my story about leaving my job. So back to Sarah's story. So when Sarah quit her job, again, like me, it wasn't a spur of the moment thing. I was working at my side hustle for 2 to 3 years before I finally left. And Sarah had been working, by the time she quit, she'd already been running her studio for 5 years. Doing both was sustainable for quite a while, but eventually it got to the point where she had to make a decision, and that's when she decided to grow the pole dancing class and leave her day job. I think people underestimate how long you can run side by side, a side hustle along with your day job. I did it for a good 3 to 4 years. Sarah did it for over 5 years. And if you're good with time management and if you're a hard worker, you can probably defer having to make a choice between one or the other for quite a while. Well, it can be scary leaving a cushy full-time job with a guaranteed paycheck to strike out on your own. That's the great thing about side hustles. Because it's on the side and because you're not counting on net income, you can grow it to the point that it's sustainable and a proven concept before you have to take the big risk of leaving your job for the unknown, not knowing if you'll be successful or not knowing if you'll be able to support yourself or not, etc. So for Sarah, that small studio space where not a single person showed up to the first class has today grown to over 4 locations with a number of different teachers working for her. And Sarah actually still teaches classes herself and still really enjoys what she's doing. So a couple points about today's story. First, about being profitable. It's important a side hustle be profitable because it's not profitable. It is not a side hustle, it's a hobby. While Amazon may be able to operate for 20 years without profits, your side hustle should be making money within the first year, ideally immediately or within the first few weeks. So it took Sarah over a year to show a profit, and while that's not ideal, she really believed in her mission, and she did see small incremental progress along the way. She also saw that this whole pole dancing thing was starting to grow in popularity, and that's why, that kind of helped her push on and stick with it. So one last comment on this story, as far as like perseverance goes. Perseverance is a great skill or attribute to have, but oftentimes when we hear stories about people who fail and fail and fail again and finally succeed, you're kind of a bit skeptical of these stories. It can kind of reinforce an incorrect belief that if you try long enough and try hard enough, you will succeed. And while that may or may not be true, the smarter course of action sometimes is strategically quitting. If you're failing at something, sometimes it's good to realize that either that's not going to work or at the very least it's not going to work for you. And sometimes it's actually good to strategically quit so that you can move on to something else that you may be more successful at. Anyhow, guys, that's today's story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were inspired. And if you guys have left your day job to pursue a side hustle, or if you're thinking about doing so, drop a comment in the comment section below and tell us all about it. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys on tomorrow's video.